I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
I don't know you, that's my purse.
Oh! How did you do that over audio?
I am very talented.
We are talking King of the Hill, an episode that we have wanted to do for a very long time, and now is the time to do it. Why? Because we have the King of the Hill reboot out, a brand new season, and I am surprised because they are actually listing this on Hulu and Disney Plus as Season 14. This is not listed as a new series. This is not King of the Hill, The Next Generation, or King of the Hill Revived. It's just King of the Hill, Season 14. It is listed with the other episodes of the original series. It is just the next season. And I actually like that.
Well, and I'll tell you why, because fair notice for all of our listener, that I am the massive King of the Hill fan, and you are the more casual viewer, I would say, right?
I'm more of a Simpsons guy.
There's nothing wrong with that, and you know me, I love The Simpsons too. You can go back, and listen to us talk about Simpsons again. But the thing is that, I don't know, I guess being from the South, King of the Hill has like a little place in my heart. Because it's one of the few shows that does do people from the South without making fun of people from the South, I guess.
That they're just, regular people with regular lives. They're not all, forgive me for saying it, hillbilly hicks, as most people would think people from the South are.
I mean, it definitely feels Southern. And more specifically, Texan. Everybody I know that is from Texas or has lived in Texas is like, yeah, there is that. But there's just kind of a general Southern nature to it that rings true, but not in a way that is offensive, which I like.
I'm going to be honest why I'm more of a casual King of the Hill fan than a hardcore fan. It's that the overall pace of King of the Hill is a lot slower than, for example, The Simpsons. And rewatching like the key episodes of the show, I understand why, in a way I didn't understand before, of why it had a more slower pace, because it just works for the stories. The overall slower pace of King of the Hill wasn't really my style, but on this rewatch, I kind of appreciate it more because it is more low stakes than the average animated sitcom, and that is just how life is.
Well, that goes back to the southernness of the show for me, because, having lived in the South for most of my life, but also having lived somewhere above the Mason-Dixon, the thing is that, man, y'all rush everywhere. Stop it. There is just really a slower pace here, You can even see it in, like, the tornado episodes and stuff, It's like, there's a giant tornado coming toward Arlen, and everybody's like, yeah, we'll deal with that when it gets here. And it's like, when it gets here, it's going to be, like, a minute and a half from now, guys. Maybe hustle a little bit. This is the one time when you can move it. But it is kind of how we deal with everything, I think, in the South is more like, we'll get around to it. There's no need to rush. It's too hot to rush. I opened my front door today, and it's like the humidity and the heat just punched me in the face. It was like an actual fist, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to take it easy today. So that I think is the difference between something like The Simpsons. Is The Simpsons does not feel like a show that takes place in the South. You know, you can joke all you want to about where does The Simpsons take place, but you really do not feel like it takes place in a southern state. Because, I mean, one, it snows way too often. There's too many snow days in Springfield. But two, they are constantly rushing everywhere. Despite the fact that the King of the Hill has the, like, banjo, hoop and holler, opening, it is such a slow-paced show, you're right. And I love it for it.
There is, especially in the last 10 years, a sort of a not necessarily a meme, but a kind of an opinion online of, Hank Hill would watch Fox News or something like that. He his political leanings and all that. And it's like, if you actually watch the show, not necessarily. I mean, one of the key episodes of the series is him meeting George W. Bush. And he has this realization that W has a limp handshake. Like, he expected, W to have this very strong, firm Texas Southern handshake. And when he finds that it's kind of not what he's expecting, he loses faith in him as kind of the president.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to do my best not to give spoilers for season 14 in case anybody hasn't seen it. And
I have not seen the whole thing. I have seen some clips on YouTube. That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, I have seen all of season 14 as of this recording. I may occasionally during this say there is something about this storyline that comes up again in season 14, because it is actually a true season 14. It continues the storyline. It is not a reboot. It is not a reconceptualization of the show. It is a true continuation of a storyline. So there are a lot of things that we will talk about during this that are referenced in season 14. And are continued or are even name checked. Even the opening joke of, I don't know you, that's my purse. Like, that episode gets referenced in a really interesting and hilarious way. In season 14, that I won't spoil beyond that, but that particular Bobby Hill moment reference is pretty funnily referenced. Whether or not Hank ended up voting for George W. Bush is kind of resolved in season 14, which is funny. And whether or not Hank would watch Fox News is also resolved in season 14. Which is also funny, but not in the way people would think. And while season 14 is not in your face political, it is political, just not in the way people would expect it to be. And it shows that Hank is not the sort of person that a lot of people are trying to make him into.
You think Mike Judge saw some of the tweets and stuff and decided, you know what, we're going to do this new show anyway. Let me put something in here to make it real clear.
It's not as pointed as that, but do I think that was on their minds? Absolutely. because people have asked Mike Judge about it before, and he has kind of been like, in anybody who thinks that Hank is that sort of person was not really watching the show correctly. Hank is very conservative in the way he sees the world, but he's also very empathetic about certain things. And I think that those two things would conflict a little bit. Also, the premise of season 14, and this is not a spoiler because it's literally the premise, is that Hank and Peggy have been away from the U.S. for an untold number of years. So we're not sure exactly how many years they've been gone. I don't think that they specifically say. If they did, I've forgotten. But they've been gone for a pretty good chunk of time. And I think maybe very specifically, probably, maybe from about 2015 on, I think specifically, wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of thing. They've been away from the U.S.
There's been a considerable time skip. Bobby was pretty much 14 at the end of the original series, and he's 21 in the new series.
Yeah, King of the Hill has always had a floating timeline.
But the characters do age. The characters do age, but, I mean, it started in 97, and it finally ended in 09. Well, I think the last couple of episodes aired in, 2010, maybe. So, it's like if you had really aged up Bobby and the other kids from when it started airing in 97 to when it stopped airing, and then you brought them back in 2025, Bobby would not be 21. Yeah, it wouldn't. I mean, when the show starts, Bobby is 12. He turns 13 during the course of the series. And he's 13 for the majority of the series. Though you could argue that he is either 14 or about to turn 14 at the very end of the series.
Yeah. But much like in The Simpsons, which also has a floating timeline, but much worse than King of the Hill, in that sense. Bobby is 13, but he's 13 with an iMac. He's 13 with,
with a cell phone.
with a cell phone. He's 13 with it's that kind of thing. And then he's 21, just as the Uber and Lyft thing is just becoming a thing in Arlen, So, yeah.
Early on, he has a old school Nintendo Game Boy, and then he has an iPad by the end of the series.
Yeah. And he's only aged 1 year. So, the thing is, though, is that they've at least moved it up enough where you can be all right, he's an adult, he's just a young adult now in the new series. But we're less interested in the new series and more about what we liked about the older series. We'll probably get to the new season, hopefully sooner rather than later, because I would like to talk about the new season too. But we'll do our absolute best to avoid any spoilers on that, because I know you haven't seen it other than some clips here and there, and I don't want to spoil it for you, because it really is good. I enjoyed it. And I think if you like King of the Hill at all, you should give it a chance, just in general. But let's talk about some of the stuff we liked about the original run of the series here. Those first 13 seasons.
One of the things I see about Hank, and I want to talk about Hank first, because he is the main character. He is the king of the hill. It's his head spinning on that logo. But it's like, yes, he grew up with his father, Cotton, and we can do an entire podcast about Cotton Hill.
We could, but we won't.
Yeah. But, Cotton Hill and his boomer mentality, he was a World War II veteran. Got his shin shot.
Yeah, he wasn't a boomer. He was greatest generation there, yeah.
Got his shin shot off in World War II, feet sewn onto his knees, so he is a very old school, men don't show emotion, women belong in the kitchen, stuck in the old ways of just being a complete asshole. And tries to put that onto Hank, and Hank is just, for that kind of upbringing, he is a very caring man, even though he doesn't know how to verbally express it. Like, he has problems even saying that he loves Peggy. He has problems saying that he loves Bobby. But he shows it. He's very much a caring father and a caring husband and a caring uncle to Luann. Even though, in those first few episodes, he's very much, she's no family to me. She's Peggy's sister's daughter. She's no relation to me, but by the end of that season, it's like she's just as much family to me as anybody else. Which, from Cotton's point of view, is very disappointing. It's why he names his other son Good Hank.
Yeah, he wants a do-over.
Yeah. To raise his son the, quote, right way. But Hank, he turns out to be as close as a well-adjusted human being as someone can be raised by someone like Cotton Hill.
It is very interesting that Cotton Hill had 3 sons that we know of. We follow Hank, of course, and then over the course of the series, Hank meets his long-lost half-brother, Junichiro, who Cotton had with a woman he apparently really did love that he met in Japan when he was stationed over there during the war. And he did not realize that he had fathered a son with her until he goes back to find the love of his life that he left behind in Japan. And there is a son there that looks just like Hank, except Japanese. Junichiro is a very well-adjusted man. And he's a very ethical man. And he does have some similarities to Hank. He also has a strong work ethic and stuff like that. So some of that you can go like, well, that's nature, maybe. Or, maybe that could have just been Japanese culture upbringing. But he did not seem to have a lot of the hang-ups Hank had from being raised by Cotton. And then during the course of the series, we see Cotton remarry to a much, much, much younger woman who is apparently Hank's age, because apparently she was in kindergarten with Hank. He marries a woman his son's own age, and has another son, which, as you mentioned, they name Good Hank. And that is his official name, his legal name. It's not his nickname. We find out in season 14 that really is his name.
First name Good, middle name Hank.
Yeah, it does appear to be his actual name. So the thing is, though, is that GH does not remember Cotton because Cotton dies during the original series.
Oh, and what a death it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good episode, but the, GH is still a baby when Cotton dies, and so he's raised by his mother, Dee Dee, and we see in season 14 a little bit of the influence that his older brother has on him, and the type of person he is becoming. He's portrayed as a teenager in the season 14, but we see the sort of person he is becoming without Cotton's influence. And it is interesting, I won't spoil it, but it is interesting to see kind of where that goes. And you do kind of wonder where Hank would have been without Cotton's influence. But also, you've got to love the influence of Hank's mother. Her ability to keep going in the face of all of the stuff that Cotton has thrown at her. I mean,
to find the strength to leave Cotton.
Well, that too, but Tilly is really awesome and good for her. So I really like that. And we do see that Hank will put up with anything from Cotton except for he will stand up for his mother. He really doesn't like it when Cotton talks bad about Tilly.
I do like how he passes that on to Bobby. Don't you dare talk to your mother that way. When he gets Cotton's influence and starts treating Peggy very cruelly. Hank would never treat his mother like that, so he doesn't expect his son to treat his mother like that.
Yeah, and that is one of the first times we see Cotton. One of the first episodes, at least, he is teaching Bobby all this misogynist nonsense and everything. And Bobby takes it to heart because Bobby just kind of follows whoever he's around. He wants to fit in so much.
He's very impressionable in the early seasons of the show. He wants to be accepted by his father. He wants to be accepted by his grandfather. He wants to be accepted by pretty much anyone because he is the short, fat kid that gets picked on.
Yeah, and you can understand that from him, and it's really cool to watch Bobby grow into himself over the course of the original run. To where you eventually get that one episode where Bobby has the great monologue about, like, so what, Mom? I'm fat, who cares? I'm also funny, and I got a girlfriend, and I got lots of friends, and I got, and that's a great line. And you can't imagine Bobby saying that in season 1, when he's following everything Cotton says. But the thing is that Cotton is a bit of a thing because, Cotton has the whole bit about, like, I killed 50 men and everything in the war and all. And he claims to, if he's telling the truth. And in season 14, we find out that he probably was telling the truth, actually. He claims to have fought in the Pacific Theater and in the European Theater in World War II. And so that means some of them 50 men were Nazis. Like, Cotton Hill, Nazi puncher, which you gotta respect. So it's like, at the same time, he is a war hero and respect if Cotton Hill took out some Nazis, but, like, at the same time, he's not a good person.
Let's transfer to Bobby, the sort of secondary main character of the show, since, you know, while half of the storylines revolve around Hank, the other half revolves around Bobby. And, you know, Bobby, like I said, he is a very impressionable child at the beginning of the season, 12 years old. He's the short, fat kid that gets picked on. He wants to be accepted. At the beginning of the series, his dream is to be a comedian.
A prop comic, too. Not just a comedian. Specifically a prop comic.
You know, this was the era, you know, he probably grew up watching guys like Gallagher.
Yeah.
Or Carrot Top, if you want.
Yeah, Carrot Top, yeah.
So, and he wanted to be like that. I mean, talking about your references, in the very first episode, he's listening to the Jerky Boys.
Yeah, they don't call them that. They call them, like, the Funny Phone Freaks or something like that. But, yeah, you immediately know what he's listening to if you were alive in that time. Also, it's so weird to think that this show started when Seinfeld was still on the air. If you watch the pilot, the first thing they're talking about is, you know, Dale asking if everybody caught the latest episode of Seinfeld last night. And I had forgotten about that when I rewatched the pilot, and I was like, oh, right. Man, this has been a long time, yeah.
I mean, you know, throw it out there. There is an episode where he tries to be Weird Al.
Yeah, Bobby does try to be Weird Al at one point.
To this day, that clip of him and Hank talking about Weird Al is played at every Weird Al concert.
Yeah, and may have been the part of the inspiration for the Weird Al biopic. Bobby, you know, he does kind of grow and change during the series, which I love. You know, he starts out being the little kid that I think a lot of us who were that kind of loner, bullied kid like Bobby was, we got into comedy and trying to be the one with the jokes and everything.
I mentioned it on this show in the past. That's how you and I became friends. We were both really big fans of Weird Al.
Yeah. But, I mean, just as a little kid, you know, Bobby and I had a lot of the same interests. You know, we would have liked a lot of the same music. We would have liked, you know, you and I would have been older than Bobby, you know, but we would have probably gotten along with Bobby if he were a real person, you know?
Yeah.
That we would have had a lot of the same interests. We would have had, you know, watched a lot of the same shows and listened to a lot of the same music and stuff like that.
Oh, you, me, and Bobby Hill watching old Carlin shows would have been a riot.
Yeah. But the thing is I think that Bobby resonated with a lot of fans of the show because we were that type of kid.
Yeah.
And so, you know, sometimes in The Simpsons or, you know, other similar kind of animated sitcoms or whatever, you can be like, well, I can see myself partially in this character or that character. But there are so many times where I saw myself in Bobby Hill. It was like, oh man, I had that same thing happen to me at school, or I had that same experience with a family member or whatever. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love this show, is because Bobby's storylines always seemed really, really close to home for me.
And of course, you know, it's because of the very different lifestyles and philosophies between Bobby and Hank that we get the classic line, "That boy ain't right."
Yeah, and the thing is that there are some great lines in there where you really get the philosophy of the show. Like, at one point, Bobby decides he doesn't want to play American football. He wants to play soccer instead because it seems a little less competitive and a little more open and stuff, just because of the guy who's coaching it, not really anything because of soccer. There's a great line from Bobby where he says, "Dad, why do you have to hate things that you don't understand?" And Hank says, "Bobby, I don't hate you." And he said, "No, I meant soccer." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, no, I hate soccer. I really, really do hate soccer." But it kind of shows the philosophy and the dynamic there is that Hank loves his family, but he might hate certain things they're doing, like...
It's I believe it is the first episode, is that, while him and Bobby are not, don't have a lot of things in common, he doesn't, at the end of the day, he's still proud of his son, regardless of what kind of person he is. As he says, "I'm proud of you. I'll never," he could never be ashamed of his son, no matter what he did, because that's his son, which is such a departure from what you would think a Southern dad would think like.
Well, and even when Bobby goes off into territory that Hank has trouble following, there's the episode which is later in the series, which is called Goodbye Normal Jeans, which is the one where Bobby takes his home ec class. And that's when we first learned that Bobby is really good at cooking, and it sets up what will happen in season 14. Again, not really a spoiler because it's in all the previews, but, Bobby, as an adult, becomes a chef. And that's the first time we really see Bobby have that talent, is that he takes home ec, and it turns out he's a really good cook.
To Peggy's own frustrations.
Yeah, I mean, Peggy can't stand this, because Peggy is the type of home cook that everybody seems to know and everybody loathes, because they think they're the best cook in the world, and it's... she makes her spaghetti and meatballs and her apple brown Peggy, and, it's like...
Peggy thinks she's the best at a lot of things that she's not very good at. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. But, Bobby turns out to actually be, a really good cook, and Hank is like, "Oh, wow, is this pork chops, but they're not dry and tasteless, like when your mother makes them, that kind of thing." But the thing is that Hank has a problem with him taking home ec instead of something more manly, like, shop or whatever. Because it turns out that Bobby is really good at sewing and, cooking and all the other girly, quote-unquote, things. And it really bothers Hank at first until he starts kind of seeing the usefulness and the manliness, I guess, quote-unquote, in his opinion, to some of these skills.
To go with the title of that episode, in trying to teach Bobby how to wash a stain out of an outfit, Peggy accidentally ruins Hank's favorite pair of jeans. And it's Bobby that sews him a brand new pair just like his old jeans, and it fits him like a glove. So it's like he is first, why is my son sewing and cleaning and cooking? It's like, oh, he's got a knack for this. He's actually really good at this. And again, it shows that Hank is proud of his son, even if they don't have the same, I hate to say it like this, but lifestyle choices.
Bobby's interest in food and food preparation eventually turns into things that Hank can comprehend a little bit better. Like when Bobby gets on the beef grating team in the one episode. Yeah, and he ends up being the one that wins them the competition because he knows exactly how to identify the prime cuts of meat just by sight and all that kind of stuff. And he ends up being really, really good at it, And
I do love that little flashback towards the end of the episode where it's like a lot of Bobby's skill, not only when it comes to meat, but food in general and the preparation and all that comes from Hank. While Hank is more into grilling, Bobby has adapted those skills to general cooking.
Yeah. And that carries through all the way to the final episode of the series, where, we end the original run of the series in season 13 with Hank and Bobby standing next to each other at basically identical grills, grilling meat. And then in season 14, you learn that Bobby has become basically a grill chef, but just in a traditional Japanese type of grill instead of, Texas barbecue kind of grill,
Which is funny since Hank does propane and most Texas grills done with charcoal.
Yeah. And I like that kind of growth over the original series, even though we end season 13 with them still being very different people. They have found something that brings them together. And there's, all the little dips in between. One of the things I really did want to talk about, because it's possibly my favorite episode of the entire series, is King of the Hill didn't really do gimmick episodes a lot, or like holiday episodes a lot, but my favorite one is one of the two Halloween episodes they did, and it's one that's really good about Hank and Bobby coming together. Halloween.
As Hank is saying, Bobby's growing up. He's going to be too old for trick-or-treating soon, and he wants one last real Halloween with his son before he gets too old to trick-or-treat. And just, it's imitating real life in that there's this very religious sect that comes in, and Halloween is satanic, and if you're celebrating Halloween, you're worshiping the devil, and these people end up successfully banning Halloween in the town. And all Hank wants to do is, I want this real scary, real Halloween with my son. I want him to dress in a scary costume. I want him to TP and throw eggs at the neighbor's house. I want the real experience with my son because I don't know how many of these days I have left with him. And that is really the core of that episode. Hank realizing his son is growing up and he doesn't have many days left with his son as a child. And he wants to enjoy those days as much as he can. Likewise, by the end of that episode, Bobby realizes it too. That he doesn't care about Halloween. He cares about spending time with his father. And I love that. I love that element of their relationship. And it's just, we've already mentioned a bunch in this episode already, but it's that, they have different philosophies, but at the end of the day, they're still father and son. They still love each other, and they want to spend as much time as they can with each other before there is no time left.
Yeah. It also contains what is possibly my favorite line in all of King of the Hill, because the antagonist in the episode is a fundamentalist woman who decides that Halloween is evil and must be banned, and and again, for people who say that Hank is that sort of conservative, he's not. It's like he's the one saying, like, just let kids be kids and enjoy Halloween. He's on the opposite side of the religious fundamentalist in this episode. And there is that great moment where she comes in and says, the complacency of fools will destroy them. Proverbs. And he looks at her and says, get out of my house. Exodus. which is such a hilarious joke. Every time I hear that joke, I have that same laughter response that you just had. I mean, I know it's coming. I can quote it, and every time I hear it, I just bust out in laughter. Because Mike Judge has the perfect, of just, Hank is so fed up with this woman, and she's standing there quoting scripture to him, and it's just the perfect comeback to that of, get out of my house, Exodus. Like, I need to stitch that on a pillow or something,
As Bobby is growing up and Bobby starts to discover girls. One particular girl, Consufanusaphone Jr., a.k.a. Connie.
Boy, did you butcher that.
Yes, I did.
It's soup and nuisancephone.
My tongue doesn't work.
It's fine. But yeah, the Laotian neighbors next door, which they have changed voice actors for some of them.
Yeah, this is a situation where it's, we will come back to this, but there has been some of the cast that have passed on since this show had originally ended. But this was a situation where the cast member did not pass on, and they made the choice to recast the character, which was originally played by a white actor, with an Asian actor.
Well, yeah, I mean, Connie at least has always had an Asian actor because she has been portrayed by the genius Lauren Tom, who is also known for being Amy Wong on Futurama.
I was going to mention it, yeah.
Yeah, and she plays both Connie and her mother, Min. However, though, her father, Khan Sr., was originally voiced by Toby Huss, who is a white man. He was the same one that did the voice of Cotton Hill, and now, we'll get back to it, but he now in season 14 has had to take over the role of Dale Gribble. Khan Sr. now is voiced by Ronnie Chang, who you may know from Daily Show. and he's also been in like Crazy Rich Asians, and I think he was in one of the Mithrigan movies. You know, that horror film thing. I think he was in those. But anyway, he's funny, and I like him on Daily Show. And he does really well in season 14 as Khan.
Okay, sorry.
So when the neighbors move in, Bobby and Connie hit it off as friends, and then they start to be a little bit more than friends, you know, in that kind of cute little childhood crush kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it really, really starts to hit that Bobby is way more into Connie than just friendship. In the episode where the Buddhist monks come to town to try to see if anyone in the area is the reincarnation of their Lama. And it turns out that Bobby accidentally passes the test they have set out. They're just going through the Buddhists in town and the Laotians and stuff, because they figure that he'll reincarnate in that same kind of way, you know, like, okay, well, he was Laotian before, and he'll reincarnate as another Laotian, maybe. But it turns out that Bobby actually passes the initial test, which was to pick out an object which belonged to the former Lama. And Bobby, unthinkingly, just trying to do prop comedy to make Connie laugh, he picks up, I think it's a cane, and starts doing a tap dance or something. All of a sudden, the monks are like, oh, no, he picked the right object. He must be the Lama, you know. And also, apparently, the Lama was, like, really into comedy. And they were like, and he's joking around like the Lama would have done, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So, yeah. That was apparently the big thing. And it was interesting because they go through the whole thing of maybe Bobby is meant to be on this path, and Peggy is like really into it because it'll mean that she's like, you know, there's a great bit in there where she passes a car that's like, you know, my child is an honor student or whatever, and she stops and she's like, well, my son is God to millions of Asians or something. Like,
yeah.
And that's all Peggy cares about. She just wants to be important in some way, you know? Mm-hmm. And Hank is like, you know, this is ridiculous. We're Methodists, and, you know, we're not Buddhists, and so you're not reincarnated. We don't believe in that. The thing is Bobby finds out that if he becomes a monk, he won't be able to have a girlfriend, and he wants Connie to be his girlfriend. So they set out all these objects and have him choose again. And he looks in a hand mirror and he sees Connie's face and says, I choose Connie because I see her reflected in that mirror. And you said I could pick anything I see on the rug. And I see her face in the mirror. And it turns out that Bobby may actually be the reincarnation because the mirror was actually the object that belonged to the llama. And the monks decide, though, that they're not going to tell anybody, because Bobby, in this form, even if he is the llama, made the choice that in this life he's not going to be a monk.
Do like that? Like, okay, let him live his life. And then Chain was sung a song.
Yeah.
His bully, who not only is he Bobby's bully, but in some episodes he's also Connie's bully. But also, hey, we're both Laotian. We're both, we both have successful fathers.
Well, no, because Con is not, okay, you know how, class systems and class divides are always weird? Mm-hmm. So there's, when you're, really poor, you look at anybody who has, if you're, poor and on food stamps or whatever, you look at people who just have, stable jobs and don't have to use government assistance, and you're like, wow, you're living the good life, But the people at that level are looking at people who are middle class, and they're like, ooh, those people are living the good life. They get to go on vacation every 2 years or something, And then, the people who are, middle class are looking at the upper middle class, and they're like, oh, those people are living a good life. They've got 2 cars, or what, whatever. And it always works the opposite way coming down. The people that have more are always looking at the people below them and being like, oh, you're trash. And that's always the thing with with Chain's family and Connie's family, is that Chain's family, his father, Ted, is, actually rich. Legitimate rich. And Connie's dad, Con, we're always led to believe, is probably making a little bit more money than Hank for most of the series. There are some times where he loses his job and gets it back and whatever, but for most of the series, we're kind of led to believe that Con is making a little bit more money than Hank. And but the Wasana songs are money. We're the big deal at the country club money, and the Supernuisson Bones are we're still trying to get into the country club money. So that's kind of the difference there. Yes. And that comes, Chain and his family are more background characters in the first 13 seasons, and then in season 14, Chain and his connection to Bobby and Connie is a major plot point, actually. And again, I won't spoil, but they go from background characters to oh, these people are really important to the story now.
I want to circle back to the hills. Let's talk about Peggy. Peggy is a substitute teacher at the school who tends to work more than the actual teacher that she's subbing.
Yeah.
She's a substitute Spanish teacher who believes herself to be fluent in Spanish. I have mentioned this on the show that I am of Latino descent. I don't understand a single word she says.
Well, yeah, and there's a reason why. And we get that reason in an excellent episode called Lupe's Revenge. In which is a season 6 episode, and it shows us that Peggy may have oversold her Spanish skills just a little bit. So the whole thing of the episode is that Peggy leads a field trip over the border from Arlen into Mexico so that the kids can get some Spanish practice. She miscounts the number of kids and ends up ushering a Mexican native little girl named Lupe onto the bus. And Peggy's Spanish is so poor that when Lupe tells her, "I'm not one of your students, I live here," Peggy just goes like, yes, very good practicing your Spanish, but you can go back to English now. And when Lupe's like, "I don't speak English," Peggy doesn't understand.
And I do love how her lack of knowledge of Spanish is what prevents her from going to jail over this. Like, she's not some highly skilled kidnapper. She's just kind of ignorant in her Spanish.
It does come up with some of the greatest lines when you either understand the Spanish that Peggy is speaking, or you read the captions so that you get the joke. She is eventually arrested when she takes Lupe back to Mexico because Lupe basically says this woman kidnapped me. Because from Lupe's perspective, that's what Peggy did. She just kind of shoved her onto a bus and took her over international border, So they arrest Peggy for kidnapping, and when Peggy tries to talk to her lawyer is like, "Oh, I realize that your Spanish is so bad that you could not have ordered this child to do anything. Like, this is all a mistake."
I love Hank in that one, too, because, Peggy is very insistent. Let me talk to them. Let me speak. I didn't mean to kidnap. I didn't kidnap anyone. And then Hank said, "Sir, you need to let her take the stand and speak in her own words," wink, wink, in Spanish. Her own Spanish words, wink, wink. And she'll clear all of this up. And the lawyer goes, "Uh-huh, I understand."
Yeah, because the lawyer does want to use the defense that Peggy's Spanish is so poor. And Peggy is like, "No, if you go on record saying that my Spanish is poor, then I am substitute teacher of the year, my Spanish is flawless. How dare you, she's saying like, "Judge, I see you're an honorable horse." It's like, because the word for horse and gentleman in Spanish sound kind of alike if you don't know the language very well. If you don't know anything about Spanish, or you just know a little bit of Spanish, it's easy to mix them up, And so I kind of like it because, if you've ever taken, rudimentary Spanish, it's every embarrassing mistake you've ever made in Spanish is suddenly coming out of Peggy Hill's mouth.
Perfect. Kathy Najimy, perfect as Peggy Hill.
Yeah, and she's doing it with such tenacity and I know I am correct.
The undeserved confidence of Peggy Hill.
Yeah, that's what I need a shirt that says "Live your life with the undeserved confidence of Peggy Hill." That's
I want to talk about one more Hill family member, and we've already kind of mentioned her. Luann. Because Luann has her own story arc throughout the entire series. She starts out, she comes from a broken home. Peggy's sister is Luann's mother. We never see it, but right at the beginning of the series, Luann's parents fight to the point where Luann's mother is put in jail, which puts Luann having to stay at the Hills in a permanent basis. Like I said, Hank does not really see Luann originally as kinfolk to him. But by the end of that season, at least the first few episodes, honestly, that is just as much a child of his as Bobby is. to the point where he completely redecorates his den as an actual room for her. Their trailer fell over. I don't have a trailer, it fell over. Why that quote is stuck in my head, I don't know. Again, it's another example of Hank being a very kind-hearted person, even though he doesn't have the words to express it. And Luann goes through her own arc throughout the whole series, starting with her on-again, off-again boyfriend at the beginning of the series, Buckley. Buckley's kind of an asshole in his own right, but he's also a stupid teenager. As a former stupid teenage boy myself, I get it.
Yeah.
And there's that big, I think it is the first big two-parter of the series, is Buckley's death. Hank ends up working at the Megalomart, working the propane, and Buckley mishandling the propane tank leads to an explosion in the store, leading to his death. Which, again, it's part of the, we were talking off mic how King of the Hill differs from shows like The Simpsons, from Family Guy, and similar of the Fox animation domination, if they still call it that. Even different to, Futurama was airing on Fox at the time, so even different to that, in that it had some semblance of continuity between the episodes. After the explosion, Luann's hair burns off. So there are several episodes within that season where she either has no hair, a buzz cut, or short hair, to show that time has passed in this timeline and her hair is growing back. It's not, if this was The Simpsons, the next episode her hair will be back to normal. No, they actually took the time to redesign Luann for several episodes to show that her hair was growing back. But Luann going through grief. She's angry at Buckley. She was about to break up with Buckley right before he died. So, I'm not going to grieve for Buckley. I'm not going to cry for him. He doesn't deserve it. Only to find, this one gift, this one last gift that Luann never opened from Buckley. It seemed very mean-spirited in one part. I didn't give you the gift you wanted because I couldn't afford it. But here's some old CDs of mine. Hope you like them. Here are these songs that I liked at one point. I hope you like these songs too. And it's enough for Luann to finally let it go and mourn Buckley, even though he wasn't the perfect guy, Which then leads to, I know you wanted to talk about it, Buckley's Angel.
Yeah, there is the episode with Buckley's Angel, and it contains what is possibly the most beautiful moment in all of King of the Hill, which is Buckley and Luann bouncing on the trampoline while Life in a Northern Town plays in the background, and it is so beautiful.
A big part of the series is Luann just trying to find love. Yes, there's Buckley, but there's also other guys that she dates throughout the course of the series. They're not great guys. And then she meets Lucky. Why is he called Lucky? Because he slipped on some urine in a restroom at the Walmart, dislocated his back, and got a lot of money.
Yep.
Lucky, considerably a little bit older than Luann. At least the way they draw him and animate him. But that's not really an important part of the story, is that they're just these two kindred spirits, and they find each other, and they want to be together, much to the chagrin of Peggy, because, that's her niece. She doesn't want her niece to marry this, in her eyes, this low-life bum. But for all his faults, Lucky really does love Luann. He wants to be with her. He tries to get his GED because he wants to feel that he's worthy enough to be with Luann. Even though they love each other, even though they want to be together, his own code of ethics prevents him from feeling that he's worthy enough for her. That he wants to better himself to be worthy of her. And then, you know what? I kind of like that. I kind of like that in the character. Of course, they do get married, and the two of them have a child together, so that kind of becomes the culmination of Luann's story throughout the entire series. She's trying to find love, a man that will love her for her faults and all, and she finds that man in Lucky, and they have a happy life together. This is the part where we get depressing. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sadly, both Brittany Murphy, who played Luann, and Tom Petty, who played Lucky, have passed since the show's original run.
Brittany Murphy passing pretty much right after the show ended.
Yeah. I think she was one of the first ones that we lost. Yeah, and Tom Petty we just lost a couple of years ago. Interestingly, I will say in season 14 they have used a lot of Tom Petty music just as a bit of a nod to him, which is really cool.
And that was one of my big questions going into the series, is just how are they going to handle that? Are they going to recast, or are they just going to just leave it be? And from my understanding, they're just leaving it be.
Yeah, this is kind of the one spoiler I will say, is that we do not get a mention of where Lucky and Luann and their daughter are now.
Maybe it's for the best. Like, let them have their life wherever they want. And we've mentioned, there's been a few recastings in the show, but I don't know if you want to recast those two characters, or if you want to, not so soon as the beginning of the show or beginning of the revival. Personal preference, but I don't know.
I think that a lot of the fandom had hoped that they would not recast, but that somewhere in season 14 we would get a character say, like, Peggy would say, like, oh, I got a welcome home card from Lucky and Luann. Ever since their move to insert state or insert town, they've been doing okay, and Gracie is now X number of years old, and, she's doing fine. She's really into My Little Pony now or something. Just like a quick little, like, they're doing fine and they've moved to, Montana or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that would have been fine. And then you don't have to recast them, and it explains why they're not there.
Yeah, they could still do that, but
they're already recording season 15, or they have already recorded season 15, so I don't know. Great characters, great storyline, and honestly, they got their full storyline. I would just like one line in the new things that are like, they're doing fine, they're in a different state. And maybe since Gracie never had a voice actor or anything, she was a baby the entire time. If they want to Well, actually, it turns out that let me don't even cut that out. Let me correct myself, because it turns out that voice actor that we love here on the show, Gray Delisle, she actually did do the voice of Gracie as a toddler. And she has been doing work for season 14. She's already a new character on season 14 that I won't spoil. But if they wanted to bring in Gracie, they could just have Gray do Gracie. That would be kind of cool, just at whatever age they want, and just have Gracie come visit and be like, oh yeah. Mom and Dad are doing fine. They send their love. But it would be kind of interesting to see what's going on with Gracie, at least.
Let's go to arguably a fan favorite character. I am talking about Mr. Rusty Shackelford.
Rusty Shackelford is my favorite.
Dale Gribble, exterminator extraordinaire, conspiracy theorist. And,
inventor of the squirrel tactics and pocket sand.
Yes. To this day, there are people who still do the pocket sand.
I do pocket sand, man. Speaking of, shout out to Squirrel Tactics over on YouTube. One of the best King of the Hill YouTube channels out there. If you like deep dives into King of the Hill, great channel for that. The thing about Dale is he is that conspiracy theory guy that everybody just somehow seems to know.
Yeah. That was another one going into, the new series. There's been a lot of the conspiracy, I will not address them by their letter, because they don't deserve it, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and they do, again, they do kind of address that. And it is kind of interesting where that goes. I'm just gonna leave that there.
But I do like how a lot of it is just ridiculous, even by conspiracy theory standards. Like, even the conspiracy theories that most people know, Dale would consider those are just false flags. Those are just, those aren't real conspiracy theories. Those are created by the government to throw you off the real conspiracy theory. Yeah.
My favorite one is that when people tell you that they're a moon landing conspiracy theorist, you just look at them and you go, Psh, you believe in the moon? So Dale is one of those kind of people that would say that, but unironically, like he would literally just be like, how dumb are you for still believing in the moon? Like. But of course, the big joke of the series, however you want to define joke, is that he doesn't trust anybody, and he believes that everything is going on behind his back and everybody's lying to him, except for he can't see the absolutely glaringly obvious, which is that his wife has been having an affair with her spiritual healer, John Redcorn, who he considers one of his best friends for, 13 years now, during the course of the show. And that his son Joseph is actually biologically the child of John Redcorn.
And it is a very open secret. Pretty much everyone in the town knows, but they don't say anything.
Yeah, because Nancy Gribble and John Redcorn are not exactly hiding anything from anybody but Dale. It's like Dale is the only one that doesn't know. Well, Dale and Peggy, who finds out during the course of the series in one of the better episodes, Peggy's Headache, where she starts going to John Redcorn for legitimate headaches, and Hank gets very upset about this and threatens to kick John Redcorn's ass about it.
We finally got the line in! I'm gonna kick your ass!
Yeah.
And I love that line after. It's like, Hank, you're my friend. I will never heal your wife the way I heal the wives of others.
Yeah, that is a great line. Sadly, again on another downer note, both actors that played John Redcorn have passed. One passed years ago, and one very, very recently. The first actor to play John Redcorn, Victor Aaron, only did it for a couple of episodes before he was tragically killed in a car accident. And then the one that everyone thinks of as the voice of John Redcorn, including in the episode we're talking about, Jonathan Joss, was just killed, murdered just a couple of months ago as we're recording this episode.
Yeah, he had recorded season 14. I don't know if he's recorded season 15 yet.
Well, I mean, yeah, we don't know how much he recorded before he passed away, but there is an episode in season 14 that is dedicated to his memory.
And we talk about the time scale of the show as characters do age all but slowly. Joseph ages through the series. You know, at the beginning of the series, he is 12 years old, just like Bobby is, but he gets a growth spurt when he turns 13.
Yeah, and it causes some tension between him and Bobby, because Bobby is, you know...
Bobby didn't get his growth spurt. He never gets... I mean, obviously he gets his growth spurt in the new series. He's an adult man now, but throughout the course of the series, he never gets it. Very much a late bloomer, Bobby Hill.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the open secret in Arlen of everybody knows that Joseph is John Redcorn's son, and I love how, Peggy finds out, like, someone should tell Dale. It's the right thing to do. But then she sees that Dale's a good father. Dale loves Joseph. That is his son. In his heart, in his soul, that is his son, and he is a good father. So why would you ruin that?
This continues into season 14 in that sense of, it's kind of that the Mary Poppins line, he may have been your father, boy, but he ain't your daddy.
Yeah.
And there is some question of that, of like, it's no question in season 14 that Joseph is biologically related to John Redcorn in the way he looks. And of course, it's still the open secret in the neighborhood. It's like, okay, all the same characters, no.
I do love, like, even in the original series and from what clips I've seen of the new series, Bobby's in on it.
Bobby was kind of in on it on the original series, because there is a line in one episode where Bobby and Joseph are talking as kids, and Joseph says, "It looks like the bug on the top of my dad's truck." And Bobby says, "You mean Dale Gribble's truck?" And he said, "Yeah, my dad." Which kind of tips us off that even at age 12 or so, Bobby already kind of figured it out. But he's smart enough to know that maybe you don't talk about stuff like that,
That also gets into Bobby's relationship with Connie as his relationship with Joseph changes.
Yeah, Bobby strangely was the one that always had the riz, as the kids would say, or may not say. I don't know. I don't keep up with what the kids say, but Bobby always kind of had a way with girls, and Joseph didn't. And then suddenly he has the growth spurt, and even though he's still awkward with girls, he looks better,
He's got the little, peach fuzz mustache going on. He's taller. He's starting to resemble his biological father more. And the girls are starting to get into it.
Yeah, and so even though Bobby's got the personality, suddenly Joseph has the looks, and that kind of starts to come between Bobby and Connie a little bit, and Bobby starts to get overlooked when he's standing next to Joseph, and yeah, okay. So it does kind of put a strain on their relationship for a little while. And then Bobby finds out that Joseph is put out by all this. He doesn't want to be dealing with all this either. And that puberty is an awkward time for everybody,
I do like that there are dedicated episodes to the three kids going through puberty. Like, I'll say it, I'm a casual viewer, but I do remember the episode where Connie gets her period for the first time, and it's Hank and Peggy that has to deal with that.
Yeah, Connie was staying with the Hills, and all because her parents were out of town for some reason, and that, they just happened to have to deal with that, that big life change. And it also teaches Bobby a lesson, because he has to ask things like, she's getting cranky at him for no reason, and he can't figure out why and everything. And at the end, he's like, because Bobby and Connie are dating at that point, and he says, are you mad at me? Do you not want to be my girlfriend anymore? And she's like, I want to be your girlfriend, but maybe not like 5 days out of the month, which I think is kind of a good way to put it for like a young teen,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to be around you, but maybe not for this like tiny little amount of time, This is a new experience for me, and I need some time to myself, so we're going to put this boundary here, Mm-hmm. So I always kind of thought that was a good episode.
But, as the kids are maturing, as they're growing, and you mentioned it, but, Bobby does get jealous of not only of Joseph, but in general of other guys noticing Connie, to the point where, as much as I love Bobby, as much as a little sweetheart he is, he does end up acting like a jerk and causing a breakup.
Yeah, that one is kind of his fault. Let's go back to Dale, though, because I did want to talk about one thing. We've been talking about actors that we lost, and unfortunately we lost Johnny Hardwick, who voiced Dale for the majority of the run. He had recorded part of season 14 before he passed. Toby Huss came in at the clutch and filled in for the rest of season 14, and will take over the character from now on. But one of the better Dale episodes was the one time his conspiracy theory kind of proved right, which is the episode Megalodale, where he has this really bizarre theory that the pest that's living in the Megalomart is not actually a pest, but Chuck Mangione?
Yeah, Chuck Mangione, the musician,
Yeah, the great flugelhorn player.
who is the official spokesman of the Megalomart Corporation.
Yeah, who we also just lost as of this recording, just a few weeks back, actually. The joke, the running gag, was that every song he played turned into "Feels So Good" within a couple of measures, which was such a good joke. And he did his own voice. Apparently, everybody said that Chuck was really down to do cameos and everything. In fact, the writer of the original Doctor Strange movie said that there was almost a Chuck Mangione cameo in the Doctor Strange movie, because there is the point in the movie where Doctor Strange mentions in the surgery scene, "Feels So Good." It's one of the songs he calls out as part of his little "I remember every song ever" trick. Apparently the writer thought that they weren't going to be able to get that song, but Chuck was really down for it and even was like, "Hey, if you want me to do a cameo, I'm available." But apparently it didn't work out, so. But yeah, I mean, Megalodale is one of the really great episodes, because it shows that not only is Dale sometimes right, but that he can kind of keep a secret, because once he finds Chuck Mangione living in there, Chuck's like, "Hey, can you maybe not tell anybody?" Because, it turns out that his deal with Megalomart wasn't exactly what he thought it was going to be, and he's now in kind of a dire situation and all this kind of stuff, and he's like, "Can you please not tell him you found me," and everything. And Dale is like comes in at the clutch on that,
Luckily for those two kids, the two workers that he was able to put the blame on.
Yeah, which are two of the guys from that '70s show. So yeah.
One of my favorite Dale episodes is the closest he's ever gotten to figuring it out. And because of his own conspiracy theory brain, he believes that Joseph's father is an alien.
Yeah.
And I love how the rest of the guys kind of play into it, but also trying to word it in a way that we, the audience, can understand they are referring to John Redcorn, but into his conspiracy brain, referring to the alien. Like, yes, you are not biologically Joseph's father, but you are his father. You are the man that is raising him. Like you said, it's the line from Guardians. He may be your father, but he's not your daddy. That kind of puts full circle on that entire storyline, even though Dale and Joseph never find out. And kind of hope they never do. Because that moment where he realized, yes, I may not be the biological father of Joseph, but I am just as much his father as anyone else. I raised that boy is mine.
Yeah, my other favorite thing about Dale is that his conspiracy brain is so deep that he does not realize that his father is gay, and instead thinks that he is a government agent, which I think is really hilarious. And I also like that the exterminator's father is named Bug. I've always found that funny. But yeah, that Dale's father is part of a gay rodeo. He and Dale have been estranged because at Dale and Nancy's wedding, Bug kissed Nancy, and Dale always thought that Bug liked Nancy, and he only did it because he was trying to hide the fact that he was gay. Of course, the kicker at the end of that episode is when Dale says, "Why would I have a problem with my father being gay? I've been friends with John Redcorn for years, and he's gay." Which I've always thought that was, like, really funny, that not only does Dale not see it, but that he has convinced himself that his wife's lover is gay. So let's talk about the other two guys on the alley, Bill and Boomhauer. Boomhauer, I mean, I hate to say it, but there's not too much to be said about him.
We're going to talk about old man Boomhauer now. If you can't talk about Boomhauer, then tell you what.
Kind of the most interesting thing to me about Boomhauer is the way that that they came up with the character, and specifically the voice, which has always been one of my favorite stories, which was that Mike Judge got a complaint call about Beavis and Butthead back in the day, where he couldn't understand the guy because the guy apparently talked like Boomhauer. And that's where he got the voice, apparently, was that this particular voice message that had been left on his answering machine was so funny that he started doing an impression of it. And that was just how it ended up. Apparently, like, the whole thing was just like, some guy was like, "Yeah, I don't want to talk to you about it in Porky's butthole. I don't know why you gotta be doing this, like, just something, you know." And apparently he didn't even get the name of the show right and called it Porky's Butthole, which I think would be a great name for a show, honestly. But apparently it was so incoherent, but it made them laugh so much that it became just a joke around the Beavis and Butthead offices and stuff. And Mike Judge just did the voice so much that it eventually became Boomhauer.
Boomhauer kind of seen as a ladies' man, though how successful of a ladies' man he is has varied throughout the series.
Well, I mean, if you're counting ladies' man as just he gets a lot, then yeah, he's successful. But during the course of the original series, we don't really see him in any sort of long-term relationship. Those always seem to fail for him. He is a amazing bluegrass musician, which is cool. And apparently, although we don't know it until literally the final episode of the series, the original run, he is a Texas Ranger.
Yeah, right there at the very end of the episode, we see him emptying his pockets, and you see his wallet fall open, and there's a Texas Ranger badge there. That would have been a great, like, if they had done a Dale doing a conspiracy theory about Boomhauer, and then it turned out to be right at the end.
Yeah, but the thing is I love the fact that most of Boomhauer's family talks kind of the same way he does. The thing is, though, is that there's not too many episodes that focus on Boomhauer, and the ones that do are just whether or not he's going to end up having a long-term relationship. The more interesting one, of course, is Bill.
The most tragic character in this entire series.
Yeah. William Fontaine de la Tour d'Autrive. He is, and of course, Stephen Root just absolutely slays this character, as he does all of his characters. Bill, he's got the crush on Peggy, And no, Bobby is not Bill's kid. If you go back and look at Halloween and you see the image of Hank as a kid going trick-or-treating, Hank looks basically exactly like Bobby in that episode as a little kid. But I know that that's everybody's conspiracy theory, that Peggy had an affair with Bill and that's where Bobby came from. But no, Bobby is Hank's kid. The longest running kind of through line for Bill is him being hung up on his ex-wife, Lenore.
Lenore ruined that man. This man was a promising young athlete. This man dropped out of high school to enter the military to serve his country. It's just happened Vietnam ended by the time he enlisted. But the point is, he wanted to serve his country. If you see any of the flashbacks of Bill during this era, he is a very strapping young man. He meets Lenore, instantly falls in love with her. This is the woman of his dreams. And this woman broke him. When this woman left him, on Christmas, mind you.
Yeah.
That man was broken mentally and physically. He let himself go. He just became this self-doubting human being, self-loathing human being, a slob of a man. The terrible thing about the show, and it is the one thing about the show I do not like, is it seems that every character in the show has some sort of happy ending by the end of the series, except Bill. And from what I've seen of the new series, it does not improve. Sidebar. I know we're talking about King of the Hill, but I want to talk about a certain other show that I used to be a really big fan of, and that was The Big Bang Theory. And the character of Raj. Raj being the only character by the end of the show that did not have a long-term relationship. And, you know, it's like this was the one guy that is the unluckiest of the four. And I kind of see that in Bill. Of the four alley guys, he is the unluckiest of the four. Now, granted, he has a tendency to be a slob. He has a tendency to be a little creepy, a little clingy, a lot clingy.
Somebody really needed to get Bill some therapy. I have nothing but empathy, but like, man, get this man a therapist.
Would he go?
If Hank told him it was a good idea, yeah. There's a couple of good episodes about Bill and Lenore. One is Pretty Dresses, which is kind of where we really get a hold of how badly his obsession with Lenore is, where Bill kind of goes crazy around the holiday season and starts wearing Lenore's old dresses and calling himself Lenore and just has a complete breakdown. And Hank has to pull him out of that by basically putting on a dress and being like, no, I'm Lenore. I don't love you. I left you. You have to snap out of it and get over it. And Bill kind of goes like, you know what? You're right. I deserved better than you. And, you know, kind of gets some of his anger out using Hank as a proxy.
It shows how good a friend Hank is. You know, he's willing to embarrass himself to help his friend get through that troubled moment in the holidays he always has.
Yeah, and the other one that I will say I liked about Bill is Hank and the Great Glass Elevator, which shows Bill getting into a relationship with Ann Richards, who was the governor of Texas. And she does her own voice and everything. I mean, it's really kind of fascinating. And it shows that, like, when Bill has just a little bit of confidence, he's not a bad guy, you know? But the thing is that he accidentally bumps into Lenore, the real Lenore. We find out what kind of a person she really is once we finally meet her. And she sees that Bill is in a good place without her, and she just can't stand that. So she kind of ruins his relationship with Ann Richards. And poor Bill falls for it, you know? He lets her do it. And Ann Richards, of course, has enough self-respect to be like, no, you're still hung up on this woman, but, you know, if you come to your senses and you get rid of her and everything, you know, you might make a good partner to somebody someday. And Bill finally sheds some of that he's got for Lenore after that episode. But he's still got a bunch of other hang-ups, you know? So we see that Bill can, with just a little bit of encouragement and somebody to believe in him, a little bit of therapy maybe.
A metaphorical kick in the ass.
Yeah, a metaphorical kick in the ass, that maybe Bill could maybe be a little bit better.
I think that's why he gets hung up on Hank. Number one, yes, the Hills are the dream. It's the life he never had. You know, the loving wife, the beautiful child, the strong family dynamic that he does not have, which is part of his obsession with the Hill family and his clinginess to the Hill family. But also, Hank is basically his best friend. Hank has helped Bill through a lot of things, even when Bill gets so down on himself, he attempts to take his own life. And, you know, there's Hank there to watch him, to help him through that time in his life. And like I said, it just shows that Hank is a caring man. He loves his family and he loves his friends, even though he can never say it. But he says, hey, we played football together in high school. I watched his back and he watched mine, and I'm going to continue to watch his back.
Yeah.
Good friend, that Hank Hill.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I will eventually sit down and watch the new season of King of the Hill again. I've only seen a handful of clips on social media, but the few clips I have seen, I am very interested in where these characters are going in this new season, and, you know, these characters getting older and dealing with the changes in their respective lives. I'm very interested in where it goes from there. So Kiki, does the original series of King of the Hill have the magic?
Yes!
I will say yes as well. Again, I've only been a casual fan throughout the original run, but doing this rewatching, and I will say this publicly, thank you, Kiki, for the recommendations on episodes to watch to really understand these characters. A lot of them I have not seen in over a decade. Some of them I never saw during the original run. But, yeah, I have a new appreciation for the show that I did not have the first go-around. And, yeah, I'm looking forward to what they do with the show and with these characters in the future.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait for season 15.
Yep. So, let's move on to next week. Oh, this is going to be a very interesting one. Next week, we are going to be discussing Little Voice. Now, this is going to be a first watch for me. Kiki, do you have a preview of this little movie?
Yeah, this is one that I really enjoyed back in the day. And it is a really good movie about a introvert with a very interesting vocal talent. Let's just put it that way. It's got Ewan McGregor and a bunch of other really amazing people in it. And yeah, it's a little known film, but one more people should know. So I want to give it a shout out.
I believe this will be our first step into the Miramax library.
Yeah, this was kind of one of the Disney Miramax things back in the day.
So yeah, finally dipping into the Disney-owned era of Miramax. So come back next week for Little Voice, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here.
Keep the conversation going. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic.
We are also on Blue Sky, rewatchingthemagic.bsky.social. And new episodes are available at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com and youtube.com/@rewatchingthemagic. Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.
We know that right now, things are tough.
But in the words of Jim Henson, the only way the magic works is by hard work. But hard work can be fun.
Check out our show notes for ways that you can help.